Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Planning Committee agenda for meeting for Monday, May 14th, 2018. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I'm going to do a quick roll call of council and staff. Starting with council, from my left-hand side, far left, Councillor Pachariva, Councillor McPherson, Mayor Easton, and on my right, Councillor Foster, Councillor Timmers, and at the end, Councillor McMillan. We have a large quantity of staff this evening that are with us. I'm just going to start from the far left. CAO Mike Kirkopoulos, and then we have Kathleen Dale, our Director of Planning. On my right, I have Julie Kirkolos, who is our Acting Director of Corporate Services and Clerk. And in the back and in the gallery, I'm just going to kind of go through from closest to furthest away. We've got Matt Bruder, who's the Associate Director of Planning and Development. I've got Neil Bennett, who's Development Engineering Coordinator. I've got Monica Coquiera, who's the Senior Policy and Development Planner. I've got Carrie Beatty, who's the Senior Communications Advisor. In the gallery, we have Director of Public Works, Dave Graham. We also have Acting Director of Community Services, Shannon McKay. We also have Economic Development Officer, Paul Deaney. We have way in the back, Matt from IT, and Megan Burbeck, who's the planning student. I think I got everybody. Are there any declarations of interest this evening from our committee? Seeing none. Confirmation of the agenda. Any members have any changes to the order of businesses detailed in the agenda? So we have this evening a public hearing. I'd like to welcome everybody present this evening to the public hearing section of the Planning Committee agenda and advise the following. Section 3412 of the Planning Act requires that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, Council must ensure that sufficient information and material is available to understand generally the proposal being considered, and Council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of giving the public an opportunity to make representations regarding the proposed amendments. Section 3414.1 of the Planning Act also requires that Council advise the public that an Ontario Municipal Board has the power to dismiss an appeal if an appellant has not provided Council with an oral submission at a public meeting or written submissions before any amendment to the zoning bylaw is adopted. If you wish to be notified of the decision regarding the application, you must make a written request to the town's clerk. There's an attendance list over by the door. For each public hearing, we would ask everybody present to sign. Everyone signing the list will automatically receive notice of Council's decision. Members of the public who come forward to speak during the hearing are also asked to state their name and address for the official record. We stress that at this point, no decision has been made regarding the applications that are the subject of this evening's hearings, and Council will take into any comments received into their account when their consideration of these items. After the public hearings, a recommendation report will be prepared by the Planning and Development Department, which will be considered by the Planning Committee at a future committee meeting. If approved by Council at that future meeting, a notice will be circulated to all that have registered with an appeal period identified. This evening we have one public hearing. The hearing is for the purpose of a zoning bylaw amendment application which was submitted by Corneef Produce Incorporated to permit the construction of an agricultural produce processing facility totaling 6,606 square meters with an ancillary office occupying 548 square meters of the total. David Riley, SGL Planning, is welcome to come forward and speak to this application. And I believe there's a presentation for members of committee. You can switch to your inputs.
Yes. Good evening, members of committee. and the public behind me. My name is David Riley. I'm a planner with SGL Planning and Design, and I'm here on behalf of Corneef Produce today to give Planning Committee a little bit of background on the requested zoning bylaw amendment and explain the application. Next to me is Nick DeFilippis here, the designer of the building, and who filed the application on behalf of Corneef. Here to answer any design-related questions as well. And I should mention that the owners are also here if Planning Committee has any questions from the operational side of things. So let's get going on the presentation here. Just going to briefly go over the location and context in case some people are not familiar. Description of the proposed development, and then I'll spend a little bit of time addressing policy. So particularly the provincial policy statement, the growth plan, and the Greenbelt plan, as well as the Niagara Region official plan and the Town of Lincoln official plan. And then I'll describe the zoning bylaw amendment in the context of the zoning bylaw of the town. And then we can answer some questions and comments if there are any. So here's the subject property. It's located on the east side of Durham Road. Almost the western boundary of Lincoln, almost adjacent to Grimsby. It's right on the corner of South Service Road and Durham Road, with the exception of a little notched out property, which is a house. There used to be a farmhouse on this property, which was demolished some time ago. So right now, the property doesn't have a building on it, except for, there's some agricultural crops there. I think there's a nectarine and peaches and a vineyard to the east, and there's going to be more of that on this property. Here's a close-up, so a zoom in of the property with the aerial, so you can see the house on the north side there, just by South Service Road, is no longer there. On the west side of Durham Road is the former Westbrook Greenhouses, which is now, I believe, I'm not sure if it's medical marijuana or a marijuana facility. Further south, the very south end of the screen, you can kind of see the top edge of the property that's going to be the future high school. That kind of goes down to King Road. And then further south, of course, there are some industrial uses along Durham Road. And you can see the surrounding agricultural community here, vineyards to the east and around. So this is a site plan of the proposed development with the site statistics overlaid. So if you look in the top right corner of the screen, you really see the whole property and where the proposed structure will be located. It's in the northwest corner. The remaining lands will continue to be used for agricultural purposes. So in the northwest corner, here we look at the rest of the map. We see the facility. Essentially, what this is, as was described by Mr. Chair, is Corneef Produce. Essentially, they're a grower and distributor of locally grown fruits and vegetables. Many of their suppliers are within the town of Lincoln and also the broader Niagara region. So the proposal is for this construction of this building, which is an agricultural produce processing facility. And what that is the receiving of produce from local farmers. Some repackaging occurs, value-added repackaging to make some products, look nice in the grocery store or at a farmer's market, and then the shipping. So what's going on here is the west end of the building. You can see a dashed line. This is going to be the offices associated with the facility, and the rest of it is going to be the warehouse, which will consist of the shipping and receiving area as well as the packaging area. So you've got parking located kind of around the southwest corner of the building. And then the loading area over towards the the south side of the building, but over to the east. And then you can see two entrances, one from Durham Road and one from South Service Road. The trucks will be entering exclusively from South Service Road and exiting South Service Road after they load and unload. And the parking facility will be accessed from Durham Road for employees and employees of the produce processing facility. So here we have what is the elevation, which would be the west elevation. So looking at it from Durham Road, and you can see the offices there. 2 stories of offices, and you can see the picture of the ground floor plan there. Now I just wanted to get into policy because this is an agricultural area, and the province does have pretty extensive policies relating to the protection of agricultural lands, particularly when it comes to lands within the Greenbelt, and then also within lands that are within the tender fruit and grape specialty crop area of the Greenbelt. So starting with the broader high-level policies of the PPS, the Provincial Policy Statement, and the Growth Plan, summarizing the policies, really the policies are to protect agricultural areas and to provide for economic activities in prime agricultural areas. Policies are also to promote and protect agricultural related uses. So an agricultural related use would be a use such as this produce processing facility that directly serves the agricultural community, particularly local agricultural community. Policies also in the PPS and Growth Plan support local food production and also speak to sustaining agri-food and agri-product businesses. And also there's policies to minimize land use conflicts and protect the agricultural areas for long-term agricultural use. So you have to locate certain uses within the agricultural area in areas that are appropriate and compatible. The Greenbelt Plan, as I mentioned, this is there's different designations within the Greenbelt Plan, and I'm sure you're all very familiar, seeing as how Lincoln is, I'm not sure if it's entirely within the Greenbelt Plan or almost entirely. But this part of Lincoln, anyway, is also within the tender fruit and grape specialty crop area. And essentially the policies require the protection of these lands, but they also require that these lands allow for agriculturally supportive infrastructure and uses that are necessary to support the agricultural community. So this would include that term I used before of agriculture-related uses, which is what the proposed produce processing facility is. Moving to the Niagara Region Official Plan, their terminology in their plan is unique agricultural area. So what the policies here, a little bit higher level than the town's policies, they do permit commercial and industrial uses that are directly related to and require proximity to agricultural uses. And the Town of Lincoln Official Plan, and you can see the map here where I've indicated the property. It's hard to tell, but the designation that applies is specialty agricultural designation. So what the town's official plan in this area does permit agricultural related uses that are directly related to farm operations in the area, such as the proposed use. Now, if there's a proposed agricultural related use that's greater than 500 square meters, which this is, it's 6,606 square meters, the town's official plan has certain criteria that must be evaluated. And this criteria relates to, making sure that the location is appropriate, that the use is compatible and does not generate any adverse off-site impacts, that the scale is appropriate, and that the character of the agricultural area is maintained, and that the property is capable of accommodating private services, so as not requiring the extension of services. And what's proposed here are private services. I believe it's it's a huge cistern. I want to say 50,000.
Potable water,
Yeah, 50,000 liter cistern. So potable water there, and private water or private sewage system as well. And stormwater is proposed to be dealt with. There's some ponds on the site, so it'll be dealt with that way. In terms of compatibility, I'm going to go back to this air photo here. You're looking at a property that's beside the Queen Elizabeth Way, and across from some, there are some greenhouses in the area, particularly the one across the street, the former Westbrook greenhouse. That's the marijuana facility now. But locating such facilities in close proximity to a transportation corridor, in my opinion, is good planning, particularly when you're serving an agricultural community that depends on accessing and coming to a certain location. And putting such facilities in areas where there are similar facilities of similar size, in terms of scale, the facility across the street is, I don't know the exact size, but it is much larger when you compare it to if you look at the plan there in the top right corner. So it's just in the top part of the property where that notches out. So you can get an idea of the scale of the proposed building compared to what's across the street. So in my opinion, this is a really good location for such a use, particularly given the access to the highway, but also the character of the area, which is a good mix of some of these agricultural related uses, as well as still providing for that agricultural land base in terms of the vineyards and the peaches and nectarines that are around this property. So the zoning bylaw, that brings us to the zoning amendment and why we're here today. So the zone is an agricultural zone. The zone does permit a produce processing facility, but it's only permitted as an accessory use to an agricultural use, and the maximum size of a building is 500 square meters. So a zoning bylaw amendment is required to permit the proposed use, and as the town sees it as kind of more of a primary agricultural related use on the property that's relating to surrounding agricultural uses in the community. So it's to permit the size of the facility, as well as to permit an agricultural related use as of right. So I mentioned a little bit about this, but the location and access. There are many local suppliers from the surrounding agricultural community. This is a new potential business in Lincoln, so will generate economic benefits for the local agricultural community. And this is directly in line with the town's policy, the regional policy, as well as provincial policy, which really strive to find that balance between healthy and viable agricultural areas in municipalities, and having these uses that are complementary. And this is a use that, in my opinion, is very well suited for these lands in particular, because of their location and the character of the area. Nick, I'm not sure if you had anything to add to that, but
I think you've covered most of it. I think the only, I guess, just to stress the point of why this facility seems to be large, but it's only because of the several growers that it serves. Instead of having several 500 square meter processing facilities or packing facilities on every little farm that's in the area, which would be permitted under the A zone, just consolidates all that to one area, because these are the people they serve, and gives a great opportunity for all these smaller farmers to have a better access to bigger markets and more, efficient economy of scale for them, so that they're concentrating on making money producing, while Corniche will act as their go-between in getting their product to the market, and expanding that marketplace for them, which would be very limited as a smaller grower trying to attack the big market. And I think they've done it for almost 65 years, so I think they're very familiar with the business and how it operates. They were fortunate to have set up their business in Grimsby. Now they're trying to expand into Lincoln and continue it, because they will cease the operation that they have in Grimsby. And I think that it's a great addition to Lincoln.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from committee? Mayor Easton?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm very interested to know, gentlemen, about the market expansion that is potential here, and what word is coming back from the community. Is this expansion going to motivate farmers to increase their planting of fruit and vegetables? Do we have any endorsements from any of the farmers that will be using this facility?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Mayor, there are many, actually I think there's quite a few of their local growers are actually in attendance this evening. I mean, they've all, as any facility like the Corneefs have been doing for years and years, they give that opportunity to these farmers, and obviously the cost of distributing, cost of selling, cost of getting your product to market is always a negative thing to a small farmer who, he can certainly produce what he can, but he has to be able to sell it and sell it at a market rate that makes it competitive for him and for the public. So things like this will obviously attract that opportunity to make it more farmers want to be able to grow, and because they know they have a facility. It's not unlike when some of the canneries that we lost years ago that they no longer had a place to bring their product, the grapes or whatever other fresh fruits that happen in many places. So without these facilities, it's very difficult for that small farmer to even think about getting into business. I mean, we have so much tender fruit area, too much good land for this type of product. I mean, this is exactly that type of facility. They're obviously trying to propose this building at a larger size because they know what the potential is for growth. Like I said, they've been in business for 65 years. Where they are right now in Grimsby, they're very constrained. They're not in the right area for access and so on and so forth, and even visibility. This will give them that opportunity, and I guess a bonus to them, and hopefully a bonus to Lincoln, I think, and the entire Niagara region, and of course, local employment for a lot of people that, can work in a facility of this type.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'll look forward to hearing from the farmers. I'm also interested, Mr. Chairman, to know about branding. I'm very familiar, I think a lot of us are very familiar with the kind of very specific branding and marketing in the grocery stores that the Tender Fruit Board does. Is there any association here with the Tender Fruit Board, or will there be a separate activity around branding?
Through you again, Mr. Chairman, I'm not 100% familiar, but the Corneefs are here, and I mean, they know the product and they know their business better than I will, and they're more than happy to have them either come up or ask a question of them directly, and I'm sure they can give you, to satisfy your
Okay,
your
Mr.
question.
Chairman, I would appreciate that after everyone's finished with questioning the presenters. Certainly innovation and technology are very important to being a center of excellence for agriculture. That's why a bold ask, an absolutely bold and more bold ask, such as this one, is appealing, because we understand that that kind of market expansion can only happen with bold moves. So do you know anything about the efficiency and the effectiveness of the processes that are going to be utilized in this facility?
Again, through you, Mr. Chairman, I guess from what, I've deciphered and watching what they're doing and what they want to do here is obviously, and I see where they are right now, that they're very, it's unfortunate because the space is constricted, the loading is very hard, the unloading is very hard. So you're moving things more than once, putting things over, not, as efficient as they could be, maybe lack of refrigerated storage, which we're going to have a fair amount in this building so that things can happen efficiently. Obviously, that's where it's all about, and being able to move product quickly through their facility and back out to the market will obviously lower the operating costs to them and to the farmer who would have to share in some of that, getting his product to market. So I think that by them having such a state-of-the-art facility that they can do what they've got to do and the room to do it in, it will always be a benefit to all that are involved with it.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, when one or more of the farmers comes up, I want to ask a question about air movement, but I'll wait until they come up. Certainly the appearance of the building is very impressive, and it would certainly make a statement on the highway, no question about that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor McPherson, then
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my questions are probably more Corneef specific as well. My questions are around potential for a tourist or a tourism feature in the building. With this type of operation, is there an opportunity here for showing what goes on in the building? And has that been thought of or built into this project? And I guess from a economic standpoint, can you give us any indication of number of employees that are expected to come through? So maybe those questions can be answered when the Corneefs come up.
Currently, they're proposing 20. I think that's what's all within the actual facility back. They are, obviously, this is not a 20-person size building. I mean, obviously, some of it will be increasing efficiencies and mechanizing whatever they can, but obviously there's still a lot of handwork. I've noticed they take a lot of pride in the display of goods into the packages before they head to the market. So obviously that needs a personal touch and obviously more employees to do that kind of stuff. As far as the other issue about the tourism, well, it's not something that I specifically touched on or thought of, but I'm sure that the Corneefs would gladly answer your questions to that. I'm not sure if they've thought about it till they just heard it from you now. So,
and just to add to that, again, not speaking on whether their intention is for that sort of use, but certainly from a policy perspective, the policies do encourage these on-farm diversified agricultural-related uses, such as those agritourism uses within agricultural areas that are associated with agricultural or agricultural-related uses. So that would be something that would be complementary. And you look at the OMAFRA's guidelines for such uses, and they do recommend certain the guidelines do highlight that there are those synergies that can make agricultural areas more viable. So again, not speaking for them, but just saying that is something that would be a good thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Petreva, then Councillor McMillan.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to actually answer a couple of the mayor's concerns. Having known the Corneefs and dealt with them years ago when we had our operation, they are a top-notch wholesaler. This will provide for an economic opportunity to support our local agriculture in our community. Is, I think, a boon to be able to lure this business away from the town of Grimsby. Long gone, unfortunately, are the days that the local farmer can supply the local grocery store. You've got two players, a third player in the marketplace that dictate everything. When we sold our business, we had to give a list of all of the local farmers that we dealt with to the parent company, and they wanted to ding those farmers with a $10,000 listing allowance, which often would put them out of business. So by having a company like this come to our town, it provides more of an opportunity for those small growers to provide them the product to take it to marketplace. So I look forward to this. And to Councillor McPherson's question too, might be a good idea when I was with Pine River Cheese, they had an area where you could look in over the warehouse. I know it seems innate to us that are here and know where the product comes from and know where it grows. doesn't just show up in the grocery store. But having been involved with the Greenbelt Ride a few years ago, I think there might be an education piece here that we as the local community can do to those urbanites to say, this is the supply chain, and this is how it gets to you, and this is the steps that it takes. So I think it might be a good opportunity. So I look forward to hearing the Corneefs themselves.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McMillan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, gentlemen, for your presentation. Just, you've described this facility as a produce processing facility. Is it going to be an all year-round operation, or what happens in the wintertime? Is the material put in cold storage and produced, and then
So you, Mr. Chairman.
processed during the winter?
I mean, wintertime, there's a lot of greenhouse growers that feed them also. They're not just, land growers, outdoor operations. So, they have to run this facility year round. They do what they can. Like I said, they strive for local product. They're doing what they can to make sure that is dealt with first. Like I said, there's a lot of local greenhouse operations, no different than the smaller farmer who needs to be able to get his product out to the marketplace and can't just rely on someone showing up on his greenhouse doorstep and buying the fruits or vegetables, or the vegetables more so. So they do. I'm sure they do some, importing of whatever they need to do. But their focus is local.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Are there any other questions from any other committee members? Seeing none. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Certainly, if the Corneefs would like to come up and respond to some of the questions, that would be appropriate at this time. Welcome. If you would kindly give your names for the clerk, that would be, and spell them.
Good evening. I'm Fred Corneef. I don't think I have to spell it, but and this is my brother Adrian Corneef.
Adrian Corneef.
We are co-owners of Corneef Produce.
Go ahead, and if you'd like to go ahead and fire some answers back to
Well, I was
some of the mayor's questions.
making some notes, some of the comments. First of all, you're talking about tourism. It's something that we never thought about. My first inclination, we have to be food safety certified. We're Canada GAP and HACCP approved. So it does have the limitations of people coming into the facility, but it's something definitely we could look at. To educate the children, see where the food is coming from. I think especially local produce, I think it's a great idea. But we are on the Ontario Food Terminal and in Toronto on the Queensway, and the biggest issue is safety for tours coming into facilities like that. This is a little bit different, but we definitely can look at possibly entertaining something like that. You also mentioned branding. Our largest customer is Longo's. If you ever get to a Longo's store, and maybe in Camiso and Niagara Falls, we supply them, you'll see the Corneef logo. I'm not wearing my jacket tonight, but you'll see packaged mini cukes. You have 6 mini cukes in a tray. You got 20 or 2 pounds minis in a bag. You do a rainbow pepper. Sometimes you'll see it in Loblaws. It's under the Farmers Market brand, but 3 cucumbers wrapped up together. And that's what we're talking about processing. Processing is actually not a correct word. It's value added that we do.
Repacking.
We take product from growers that pack it bulk and then, change the packaging, brand it under our one name, and represent them that way. A comment about what do we do in the off season? We have growers that grow cucumbers probably 11 months of the year now. Tomatoes, 9.5 months of the year. Peppers about the same. We do also sell flowers, which we do in the wintertime. Cut tulips, something we've been doing for over 40 years. So that does keep us busy in the wintertime. But we do emphasize on local only. So 9 years ago, we moved to the Ontario Food Terminal. We moved in the inside terminal, if anybody's familiar with that. We were in a farmer's market for 40 years. And of all the tenants on the inside market, they did a study, and we have the highest average percentage of local produce. 90% of our product is local. And a good portion of that comes from the Niagara region. What else?
We're also doing with the peaches, the local branding, putting our name on the sleeve with the plastic clamshell. So there's more and more, but the more space we have, the more we can do some of this local branding and do more of that local stuff.
The value added.
But we're limited to the space that we're at right now in order to do any of that.
Is there any other questions from committee that haven't been answered that would like to be asked? No? Thank you very much, gentlemen. Really appreciate you.
Thank you for your time.
coming
Thank you.
forward. Is there anybody else this evening present wishing to speak to the application by Cornif Produce Incorporated? If yes, please come forward. Please state your name, address, and spell your surname for the record. Please speak into the microphone so that everybody present can hear you.
Good evening, committee. I'm Bob Troop from Jordan Station, 4145 13th Street. The last name is spelled T-R-O-U-P, if that's any help. I'm a local grower. I'm a fifth generation on our farm, and I've been dealing or providing Cornif Produce with fruit. I think this is our 27th year. And I would say that when we first started, it started slow and small, and it just kept growing and growing. And at this time, they would take 95% of everything that we produce on our farm. Our farm is about 180 acres, we've got more than one piece of land. So we're a significant commercial grower. We're not just a small grower or anything like that. And it's run very smoothly over the years dealing with Cornif Produce and distributing our fruit to the markets. And one of the most interesting things that has happened was that Longo's markets, I'm not sure if you're all familiar with them or not, but Longo's has been out to our farm now, I think, 3 times, bringing their managers out for a tour. And the Longo's brothers, I met them all. Most of them have, I think there's 2 that have passed on. They just considered us to be their peach grower. And they feature our peaches throughout the summer at different times, and it's been a really good relationship. And they came out and shot a video of the farm and did lots of that kind of thing just for their customers. We really rely heavily on Cornif Produce to distribute our product, and we certainly are in favor of this application.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any questions from committee? Mayor Easton?
Thank you very much for coming forward. I'm interested to know whether you would be motivated to increase your production as a result of this expansion.
That might happen. We got into growing some different products that we thought would enhance some of the things that Cornif does, and we've recently planted several acres of flat peaches. I don't know if you're familiar with them, and they are a bit of a unique product, and we're trying to market them through Cornif's. Our own case, we probably aren't really looking to expand and buy more land, but we try to develop more usefulness of the land that we have, and that would, rather than purchasing more land, it's so difficult in today's world, or it seems to us, with all the rules and regulations, to keep expanding with I mean, on our own case, we're now limited. We can't even get more labor in to, like, we can't build more help houses because we're, I guess we're at our max now. So we're not getting a lot of encouragement or that much help, for that matter, from, it feels as though we're not getting that much help from the provincial government to expand what we are already doing. And we're more likely to expand on value added or look in that way to stay above board.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Troop.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here this evening wishing to address this application by Corneve Produce? Please don't forget to state your name and address and spell your surname for the record.
My name is Ernie Reimer, R-E-I-M-E-R, and I'd like to speak on behalf of my family farm, which is Quarry Ridge. It's on Quarry Road here in Beamsville. And Robert here spoke about the tender fruit. I was speaking about the grape side of the equation. Sandra mentioned before about efficiencies. If you go to the grocery store these days, you'll notice that pretty well everything is packaged in plastic containers, bundled, tied, ones and twos. On a grape farm, we spend a lot of time and energy on husbandry and growing, and it would be irresponsible for us to try and entertain going into the packaging and repackaging part of the business for my family and my family farm. And you also, and that's where a facility like this and branding that Corneve Produce does in the marketplace is very efficient for us. And I know that there are other grape growers as well that do both fresh and wine grapes as well. For us, the fresh fruit is a small portion of our business. We are trying to expand it with earlier varieties of grapes that the Hort Station is experimenting with. But it's early cash flow for us. As you know, the grape check only comes on November the 22nd, basically. It's nice to get a little bit of money earlier, and that's where the tender fruit comes from. So for our family farm, it's very efficient to have a facility like this, and we would be more than happy to support the building of that type of facility. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any questions from committee? Anybody else here this evening wishing to speak on behalf towards this application? Please come forward. Anybody else here this evening wishing to address the application by Corneve Produce Incorporated? Third and last time. Is there anybody else here this evening wishing to speak to this application? Seeing no more speakers, I'm declaring this public hearing closed. We will now deal with the preliminary report regarding the application. Are there any questions from committee members respecting report PL 18-26, the zoning bylaw amendment by Corneve Produce Incorporated? Councilor McPherson?
Just a comment that, I know the area very well. I work up the street, and for all the reasons that the planner mentioned, I think it's a fantastic location, close to transportation, basically away from any residential, properties. It's basically a vacant land today. So, utilization of that property with this type of business just is exciting. It's exciting that we've got this opportunity to come into town. And, I think that diversity and it's always great to see the owner come and speak in front, and also great to see some of the customers come and speak to us. It just makes it clearer for us how important this project is for everybody involved. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there anybody else wishing to speak or having any questions with regard to the report? Okay, just a moment. I just need to get a mover for this motion. motion moved by Mayor Easton and seconded by Councillor Timmers. For the reasons outlined in PL 18-26, it's hereby recommended that this report regarding zoning bylaw amendment application in the name of Corny Produce Incorporated be received for information, and the recommendation report be prepared once all comments have been received and the issues have been addressed. Committee's pleasure on the motion? The motion is carried. Next section of our meeting this evening is going to be the delegation section. Just wanted to remind everybody that, as I stated prior to the public hearing, a recommendation report will be coming to a future planning and development department meeting, and then it'll be considered at that point. So we have many delegations this evening. The first delegation is James and Stacy Yarrow, who are here to address an unopened road allowance on High Road. Mr. and Mrs. Yarrow, please come forward. You have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Good evening. Am I able to use to show a PowerPoint, just a really quick PowerPoint?
So if any other folks that are making presentations this evening have PowerPoint presentations, please drop them to the clerk as soon as possible so she's prepared for them. Thank you.
Oh, we didn't know that. I'm sorry. Can I just yep, sure. We gave the hard copy. She didn't say anything about the I'm sorry. That's fine. Which one is it? Sorry. Quickly. There. Just 1 second. Okay, so
Please go ahead.
sorry, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to the committee, Mr. Chairman. We're here to talk about actually an unopened road allowance location, which is at on Spring Creek Road. Our address, I'm James Yarrow, Y-A-R-R-O-W. This is my wife, Stacy Yarrow. We are located, our home is at 3617 Spring Creek Road, and we're talking about a road allowance that is basically at the end of High Road at Spring Creek Road, right beside the address of 3610 Spring Creek Road. So our purpose tonight is just to discuss the opportunity to potentially open that up for purchase by the property owners who own the property beside that location. And then we just want to quickly explain our reasoning for allowing this to happen, because currently there has been a moratorium on the ability for the homeowners to be able to purchase this piece of property. They did put an application in 2013 for the opportunity to purchase this property. We do have a copy of that application that they put in. They discussed different reasons for putting in, for purchasing that piece of land, but they did not state at the time what the real big advantage would be to having that piece of property.
Or their intention.
Or their intention, really, for using it. They have, at that time, they've built an egg facility, an egg production facility on their property. In 2015, they did construction on their property. So what they've done in this first slide is just showing they've built a road, basically a road access to their chicken facility, to their egg facility on their property. This road is currently, that view that you're seeing is directly a picture from our front porch of this access road. This access road is used by large trucks on a regular basis for different purposes, obviously. When you have an egg production facility, it's obviously getting the eggs, bringing the chickens, removing the chicken waste material, obviously, and all sorts of different applications for getting back to this property. So
there needs to be water delivered to this facility, gas, in terms of propane, those sorts of things as well.
So this road has been opened up on their property, right directly across from our heritage home. We have a designated heritage home in Lincoln, and we just find with the truck traffic that ends up literally parked right in front of our house, it's causing a lot of disturbances to us from different levels. Safety concerns. We have some safety concerns about having these trucks parked in front of our property at times, and having a hard time negotiating the turn to access this particular road for their different purposes.
The access road is 43 feet wide, and it's less than 72 feet from our front door.
So they opted to create this road here to access their property because they were not allowed to use that particular stretch of unopened road allowance beside their house. So now they've opted to put it there. But it basically negatively impacts us as well as a neighbor they have across the road from us, which this property does actually circle around the other property. There's also road damage that's being caused by yeah.
I just want to also show here that when the trucks are turning in, and if you backtrack that slide, you'll see that they're almost, like my son stands right beside that mailbox for his bus. So you can see how when they're turning, they're almost in our driveway to turn, which is a huge safety concern.
Yeah, and we also have chickens of our own. Now, our chickens are free-range chickens on the property. They wander about our property. So our other concern is a biosafety concern with these trucks coming from different egg facilities in and out of the property. So our wish and goal is to just showing this is just showing damage onto the roadway right directly in front of our house. So that's the shoulder right in front of our house. And this, just the one picture here does show the one neighbor. They built this road so it actually surrounds and goes around this one neighbor's property. So this other neighbor has to deal with the truck traffic going directly around the property. When before, it was field used. They had different types of cash crops that they would grow on the property for, which was quite fine and didn't have any. And again, we have no concerns. They have complete right to put up a chicken facility. We had no concerns, and we weren't going to argue about putting up an egg production facility there. Our concern is the access to this facility and how that they're using it to get there.
And currently, we are in front of the Normal Farm Practices Protection Board. We have a hearing upcoming, so we want to show that there is an opportunity for a better location for that roadway.
And that this is just this is a picture at High Road and Spring Creek Road. So the road we're talking about would go directly straight up from High Road is what you've deemed as, I guess, a road allowance for the town. But what we're saying is they're already maintaining the property in front of their, in the one picture you're seeing that's their house, that's the homeowner's property right there. They're maintaining that property. They're already clearing it and mowing it and looking after the property where the town of Lincoln has their road allowance. So what we're asking is if they had the ability to purchase that piece of land, they could put the road there, access their facilities easier without any disturbance to neighbors whatsoever. Any concerns?
They had also talked about that at first it was going to be a egg production facility of 5,000 chickens. And in less than a year, it was at 15,000, and we have no idea where it is today or what the plans are for the future as well.
So the road that they have currently, we don't know in the future what they're going to be able to use that road for with any other facilities back there. So we're just thinking by them being able to construct the road here as opposed to where it is, they'd have that better access to their facilities there. There's no concern with the other neighbor on the other side of that tree lot. We already have, right from their application, that neighbor didn't have a concern with them purchasing that and being able to use it. And as far as I know, we have talked to the town about this. Some of the people of the town here, lovely people on the panel tonight, have been very gracious to let us speak to them about this issue for a while now. And we're at the point, though, where we have a hearing in July with OMAFRA about this. So what we are looking for is support from the town to say, is this an option where these people could potentially buy this location and put the road here? And if that is the potential, then at least we have that as something we can put forward to the board, to the OMAFRA, to say, you know, the town.
It's a solution that, you know, really betters the entire local community that's right on Spring Creek Road.
Yeah.
And addresses all the safety concerns.
And now the only other things what we went around the town of Lincoln just to see how other egg production facilities are run, or what other kind of road access points there are to chicken barns and chicken facilities. And we noticed that we couldn't find any other situations like our own, where there's a road directly across from our front porch that close.
Less than 72 feet.
We drove around and saw other people's property, and usually there's woodlots across the road or just other agricultural property across the road without it really interfering with other people's homes or daily lives. So it's just our want that they use. And there is, and as far as we know with our discussions with the town to date, there has been no plan for that road. There is no long-term goal for the use of that road now, as far as we know. There's just been a moratorium on the ability to sell that, to basically do any development on it. Which one, sorry?
One of the trucks.
So you are in your last minute, so
Okay,
if you could wrap
we
up,
just have
that'd be
one.
great.
Sorry, we just have one video that you can actually see. A truck having difficulty, because oftentimes what happens is the trucks have to stop on Spring Creek Road, back up, which is very noisy, renegotiate the turn, sometimes 3 times, in order to make the 90-degree turn into the roadway. So we just have one slide where literally a truck was. And because we're so close, it is dangerous. We're trying to protect our family and our home. And in one slide, you can see where the truck almost slides into our ditch at the front while they're trying to negotiate coming out of the roadway. Okay, here it is.
So that's literally looking out our kitchen window. So the trucks, they're having a hard time negotiating in the winter. Our other concern is obviously they could slide right off the road into the ditch. They could cause damage or, anyways, it just, from our perspective, you know, where we live in the country, this was not our goal and
Did not
dream to.
anticipate that we would have transport trucks right outside our front door on a, you know, fairly regular basis.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank
you coming in. Are there any questions from committee? Councillor Timmers?
Thank you, Chair Thompson. Thanks for coming in tonight. I've been up, I've been at your house, I've seen the situation, and it's really unfortunate, and it's too bad that this has happened the way it is. You know, it is a farming facility. They have every right to have an access road. My question is, where are the owners on this? Because we can't negotiate with a neighbor. Like, the owners need to come to the table. The owners need to make, you know,
Right.
some
Well,
kind of...
currently, because of the hearing, the owners are obviously upset with us for going through to the hearing stage of this, but we do think that there is a very viable resolution. And we think, had they been upfront at the beginning when speaking with council about their reasons for wanting to purchase the unopened road allowance, or even spoken with us about their plans, this could have all been avoided. So I think right now what we're looking at is seeing from council if you would agree that this is a viable option that then we can take to
So
our
OMAFRA
hearing.
can essentially direct them to look at some other options for the road. So, but if there's no, we don't want to go there with no solutions to the OMAFRA hearing. We want to be able to say, here's a solution, and the town
Because
would back it.
they're not willing to really speak with us right now.
Okay, so you're looking for an alternative
Yes.
solution to present
Yes.
Right.
on your behalf.
Right.
But I guess what I'm saying is the owners have got to come to the table
Definitely.
and have got to be
But if this-
willing to work with that.
But if council is able to say, well, you know what, in light of this information, it is a viable option, then I think perhaps we can move to that next step. That's what
Yeah, we
we're
just want to
hoping.
be able to present that it's a possibility. We're not saying that they will
We'd
even
like to present
do
it
it,
even
but
before the
yeah.
hearing. I mean, we want a solution to this
Okay,
issue.
thank you. Mayor Easton?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make certain that the goal is also to stop up the west access.
Stop up the west access.
Well, the access that exists right now is on the west side of your neighbor's house.
Yes.
Yes.
So the goal is to
Close that.
Move that access, yes, and then have the
stop
access.
up that access and have the others
Yes.
as
That's
the
correct.
main access. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Any other committee members? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Our second delegation this evening.
Chairman.
Oh, yes, Madam Mayor.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. There is no report for us to consider with this last delegation. Am I missing something?
No, there is no report, Madam Mayor.
Then could we check with the clerk then? Can we ask a question of staff to find out what they would consider reasonable?
Certainly, maybe the director would like to address that. Would you like to address that, Ms. Steele? Perhaps the CAO would like to address it. Go ahead, Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Through Mr. Chairman, I do want to thank Mr. and Mrs. Yarrow who are here today, and we have been working with them collectively as a staff. I know I toured their property, as did Ms. Dale, a number of months ago in the effort to seek a solution. I think Mr. and Mrs. Yarrow are correct in that from a staff perspective, we are supportive of finding a solution, but it is a matter of bringing all the parties to the table to determine if there is a solution and if there is a desire on behalf of the current property owner across the street to likely have to entertain some sort of cost, although that is negotiable as we have our current policy around road allowances to a point where it addresses this particular issue. So staff did highlight, myself personally, that I would be working with Mr. and Mrs. Yarrow at the time of this particular hearing in an effort to try to broker a solution if there's a solution to be had.
Thank you very much, Mr. CAO. Is that okay, Mayor? Thank you. Thank you very much. So our second delegation this evening is Ms. Angela Bonamici of IBI Group to address report PL 18-28, a request for a minor variance application by Agribur Ontario Incorporated. You're already there. Very good. You have 10 minutes. Please go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, Chair, councillors, and staff. As it's stated, I am Angela Bonamici with IBI Group on behalf of the owners of the Cherry Heights Extension Subdivision, Agribur Ontario, Inc. First of all, we'd like to thank staff. They have worked with us with getting the subdivision agreement to the point of executing it tonight if it is approved. And therefore, we are supportive of that moving forward as well tonight. But as was stated, we're here to formally request to be able to submit our application for minor variance. It affects two lots within the subdivision, lot 22 and 23. When we first started this design, between those two lots was a 6-meter easement to that had a pipe going into the stormwater pond. Through the detailed engineering design, a walkway was to be placed within that 6 meters. Unfortunately, walkways are not allowed within easements, so we had to create a block. To maintain the 6 meters, we're going with a 4-meter block and 1-meter easement on either side of that block. The variance is to reduce that side yard setback for lots 22 and 23 from 1.2 meters to 1 meters. So that's why we're here, is to request that we can make that minor variance application. I'm here to answer any questions regarding that. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any questions for the delegation? Seeing, sorry? Go ahead, Councillor.
Mr. Chair, so we're talking about 0.2 meters.
On
Times
either
two.
side, yes.
Times two.
Yes.
So we're talking about, what, 4 feet total?
John is saying 8 inches.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next delegation is Mr. James Burnson, 4076 John Street in Beamsville, to speak to report PL 18-30, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment by Cuesta Estates Winery. Mr. Burnson.
Thank you for allowing me to speak, Madam Mayor and Chairman. Up at the top of my road at Maple Grove and Highway 8, brewery has already been passed, and I don't have an issue with the brewery being there. I have an issue with the church, which is just very close proximity of the property, now being built to do a banqueting type of operation. If they're to consider the additional activities within the close proximity of the brewery with a banquet facility, then they will have to ensure that the safe processing and human waste disposal of both sites be done. The brewery appears to me being a ticking potential time bomb, and that the banquet hall will either take it over the top or may take it over the top. The brewery waste could create issues for the banquet hall itself with smells or soil sludge working its way to the surface. What I noticed on the brewery so far, which I thought was just going to be a school, but now it's a factory, there is no wastewater holding tank at the side that I can see that I consider a external waste treatment before it goes into the septic tank system. I'm going to just read what I put together for this. Don't put brewery wastewater into a septic tank unless the site has been designed for it. Keep in mind that what a septic tank is. It is a slow-acting system working with aerobic bacteria to digest the nutrients before it gets discharged into the drain field. There's no moving parts, and it works, but it happens very slow, and most systems are designed for a low flow rate. In general, brewery discharges far more water than a septic system can effectively treat. Of course, the septic system is fine for your kitchen, restroom, sinks, and etc. What I've noticed in that area is it's red clay. Red clay does not percolate and filter water very effectively. Some of the problems you encounter with brewery wastewater in a septic system is yeast growth, both in the tank and in the drain field. Even if you side stream your spent yeast, some yeast will make its way down the drain, reproduce, and die, thus creating a thick sludge that builds up quick. Another problem is the sugar in the drain field. This sugar can build up to a caramel in the drain rock, eventually creating a virtual impenetrable layer that you'll end up having to dig up and redo. Digging up the drain field annually could be budgeted as a cost of doing business, but it's not the most environmentally responsible solution. Grains and hops are another problem, of course. You'll have, most of these you'll end up giving to a farmer, which I'm sure he's probably done. But stuck mash, a spill, a valve left open, whatever, it's reality. One mistake can fill up your septic tank and then your drain field. You'll have to dig it up, start all over again. Of course, if this be unplanned, and us as neighbors down the road will be the ones that are going to have to pay the price for that. My concern is not only are you going to have the brewery within close proximity, but now you're going to have a banquet hall with people flushing the toilets, doing dishes, other activities that are around a banquet type of facility. One solution, and I have no problem with the brewery being there. I enjoy a beer. Trucking all the waste for 1 year to allow an accurate evaluation to the wastewater treatment process. If you do install some sort of wastewater treatment, it is recommended not tying in your septic system for the restrooms, etc. Keep them separate forever. This makes dealing with the wastewater and maintenance much easier from a pathogenic perspective. And one other thought, John Street in Maple Grove, I don't know if you've been there during storms, I've got pictures and I wish I was more prepared for this, is now a catch basin for the slope towards the lake, frequently taxed after rainstorms fed by surface and groundwater. This is directly downhill from the site of both the proposed banquet facility and the recently passed Bench Brewery. This type of runoff into the community should be addressed to ensure no pollution issues will occur affecting my family and possibly contaminating any of the soils that are around and further downstream. That's what I'd like to say.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your submission. The next delegation this evening is Ms. Brenda Keys of GSP Group to address report PL 18-30 official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment application by Cuesta Estates Winery. Ms. Keys, you're already there. Please go ahead.
Good evening. Let me just get this started.
You have a presentation? Okay.
I do.
So, committee members, if you want to change to your inputs, you can follow along.
I've got it in front of me. Just won't. How can I get in the slide presentation mode? Sorry. Can I just touch this? Please do. The computer's different. Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I would like to deal with some of the issues that have been raised. I'm here with the owner. Matt's here behind me to answer any specific questions you might have. I'm sure you're all familiar with this site and this application. The property is located at the northeast corner of Maple Grove Road and King Street. The adaptive reuse of the church is the application you have before you that staff have written a report regarding. And it's located at the very north west corner of the property. So in terms of, I don't want to repeat what I said in my previous presentation at the open house, but we are looking at an adaptive reuse of the church as a banquet facility with a small addition on the south side to provide access that meets the accessibility standards. So from an official plan perspective, the property is designated agricultural specialty crop. Policy 2.1.5.4.3.3H of the official plan states that larger scale agritourism uses accessory to estate wineries or microbreweries, such a banquet facility, are permitted where the total gross floor area does not exceed 235 square meters. In this case, while the St. Helens Church, the building floor area does not exceed that. Once you take into account the space within the building, we're not expanding the building for this use other than for the accessibility, it exceeds that 235 square meters. And for that reason, we require an official plan amendment. From a zoning perspective, the site is zoned A60 agricultural site specific, and it was subject to a board hearing where the current use was permitted, but a banquet facility is not. So we're requesting a zoning bylaw amendment to permit the adaptive reuse of St. Helens Church for a banquet facility. Now I'd like to go right into the community concerns, and these are ones that were submitted throughout the circulation process. The first, one of the major concerns that came in had to do with what happened with the approved landscaping that was supposed to be implemented. So that landscaping is still going to happen. It's actually underway now. It's not unusual for the landscaping to be the last thing that happens when the construction of the main use has been completed. So my understanding is that the construction of the landscaping has begun, and it will be completed. It's anticipated to be completed by the end of June, prior to at the end of June, before the opening of the tap and tasting room, which is targeted for June 29th. We do plan on maintaining exactly what was approved through the current site plan approval process, and as a result of this particular application, that site plan application will likely be amended to address some, perhaps some enhanced landscaping, especially along the north property line. Another issue that was raised pertained to lights coming out of the most northerly driveway, which is the far right side on this particular display in front of you. So In the evening, the concern of the property owner across the street was that lights would be going out of the facility directly into their residential area. So what the owner has talked about is that in the evenings, they would ensure that traffic would be directed to use the far southerly access. That's that long green arrow that you see in the picture before you. In addition, the new lights on the church, they're talking about using fully shielded property and floodlights, whereas now they aren't. So we're going to ensure that both the parking lot and the church itself will have lights that will be pointing into the property, not outside the property. In addition, one of the concerns raised was the visual dominance of the south wall. One of the concerns was that it takes up too much space. You're going to remove 4 out of the 6 Gothic windows, and that is not the case in this particular instance. It's a glass addition. The intent is for you to be able to see through the glass, so you can still see the heritage building behind, and only 2 of the Gothic windows would need to be removed, and they are going to be relocated to the brewery further to the south and put on display to basically tie in the whole heritage aspect of the property in general. So we want to ensure that the reason we put it there is to provide the direct connections, and it actually provides for better access from an accessibility perspective into the building where it would be used for the banquet function. Another issue was raised pertained to noise, and from that perspective, the event space that you see to the right, where it's under the words glass addition, we want to make it clear that there will be tents that would be constructed. So any activities that would be happening outdoors would be in tents. It wouldn't be open. It wouldn't be an open air situation, and it wouldn't be used on a daily basis for banquet facilities. The noise bylaw that the town currently has will be obviously implemented and applicable to this site. Any events that would happen after 9 o'clock would be subject to a special events permit, and that whole process would be addressed at that particular point in time. And once again, along that north property line, we anticipate that enhanced landscaping would be a requirement. Now, the last concern relates directly to the previous delegate, and that has to do with the servicing. This is just a quotation taken from the comments. A pre-sewage treatment system similar to other industries' breweries should be considered, and any wastewater issues should be resolved prior to these applications being approved. In this case, the concerns that have been raised, my understanding based on what I've heard this evening, relate more to the brewery, which has already been approved, and the sewage system has been addressed and is adequate and has been approved by the town. With respect to this application and the conversion of the adaptive reuse of the church for a banquet facility, we plan on using the on-site sewage system for the property, for the church. It will be separate from the brewery. We will likely have to do some improvements, potential expansions to it, which will be subject to the town's approval and the appropriate processing of those applications through the site plan approval process. So we will definitely be dealing with the on-site sewage waste with respect to the banquet facility using the current septic system, which will be dedicated specifically for domestic sanitary waste. That's really all I had to say this evening. We're very excited about the adaptive reuse of the church. It is consistent with the Greenbelt Plan and the provincial policy statement from a land use planning perspective. It conforms with the regional official plan, and we feel it's a wonderful addition. It maintains the community function of the church, which at one time I'm sure had wedding celebrations and those types of things that happened at the church. And I'd like to respectfully request that the applications be approved at the next point in the agenda, and I fully support that. We fully support the staff report that was prepared, and it appropriately addresses all of the concerns that were raised by the community, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from committee to the delegation? Councillor McMillan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, not a question, but just a comment. I'm very pleased with what your organization has done with the respect for the heritage issues with that church. It is not a designated heritage building yet, but certainly the Municipal Heritage Committee that's high on their agenda, as well as Maple Grove School as well. So again, I'm really pleased that the respect for the heritage has been, is acceptable to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Mayor Easton?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to ask Ms. Keys about I understand your statement about the use of the septic system and the approvals that were received. Could you just speak to the committee about the issue of volumes and the concern that the previous delegate had in regard to the volume of activity that will be going on in that septic system?
Certainly, I think I'd call on the owner to respond to those particular matters. He's much more adept at explaining that whole process.
Hi. To Mayor through Chair. Yeah, the septic system that we have currently is more than adequate to take care of the volumes of brewing effluent that we have currently. We have an aqua wetland system, which is more than what we were required to put in. It's used frequently throughout the Niagara region by wineries. And that is an initial treatment of the bigger solids, if you will, of the brewing effluent before it is then pumped up to the biofilter, which is then more of a traditional septic system. So we have more than enough capacity currently with our brewing and projected brewing volumes, not just this year, but into next. I, like Mr. Brunison, is very concerned with respect to the brewing industry and water security, as we like to call it. We've just employed an environmental compliance officer at Bench to look at all the pertinent issues for us to ensure that the water that leaves prior to treatment is in its best possible form. We do side stream all our yeast and hops, which is put into, everything is given to a local farmer. All our spent grains are also given to a local farmer. We've just entered, after doing exhaustive due diligence, just entered into a partnership with a company called Econs, which provides water treatment facilities, on-site water treatment facilities in the brewing industry. Our goal is to treat the water on-site for reuse, on-site. And that's exactly what we've been focused on for I guess, since the very beginning. We didn't really feel we needed to talk about it because ultimately, and I'm not sure if this is the forum, but ultimately the system that was approved by the Niagara region is more than adequate for what we're trying to do, but we're trying to take that extra step. As a farmer in the region who needs water for irrigation, I also would be looking to have that water treated to a level such that I could use that in other locations. I'm looking at that now with a nutrient management consultant. NASM, non-agricultural source material, would be what this water is classified as, so I'm certainly looking at that. But the idea is for us to reuse on-site for our clean in place, so gray water for all cleaning of our tanks, everything but putting in beer. Also an intent would be to use on-site irrigation for our 3 acres of hops. So currently entering the second year of growth. We expect to get 60% harvest this year, and as grapes, it takes 3 years to have a full harvest. Next year we'll have 100%. But those plants take 45 liters of water per plant per week, and there are 1,000 plants per acre. That's a lot of water. And I need to use that, and I want to reuse that after treatment on site. So that's my intent. This is very front of mind for me. I completely understand Mr. Brunison's comments and concerns, and I would welcome a discussion with him at any time to bring him on site. And in fact, I'd like to bring Econs, my water treatment partners, here before council, or certainly speaking with members of planning to show them my strategy, or our strategy, and how that hopefully is very positive for our water treatment.
Mr. Chairman, I think that additional explanation was very important because I certainly had read about the use of hops and how they can get quite congested, can create a lot of congestion. So it's good to know that, like gray water, you can siphon those off or move those off into another kind of a system and haul them away. So, Mr. Chairman, my only other comment, and it's really just a personal thing, is that I'm not particularly impressed with the glass building that you're putting on the side of the church, and I have to leave that to you to see if you can come up with something that's more, a little bit more compatible, I guess, with the building. I certainly saw a design previously that was quite outstanding and complemented the spire at the front of the church, and really, I thought, enhanced its historic value as well. So I'll just leave that with you. It's just a little niggling of my own. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. Anybody else have any comments or questions for the delegation? Thank you so much. I appreciate the presentation. Our fifth delegation this evening is Mrs. Helen Zimmerman, speaking to report PL 1831, proposed revisions to the Animal Care and Control Bylaw. Mrs. Zimmerman, please come forward. So please ensure that the little red light is on the microphone so everybody can hear you.
It's on.
Very good. Please go ahead.
My name is Helen Zimmerman. I live at 3312 Vine Street in Vineland. I'm a cat lover, the owner of 2 sterilized rescue cats who are indoor cats. I moved to my present property on Vine Street, Vineland in the fall of 2015 and have been dealing unsuccessfully with the stray and feral cat problem since that time. My neighbor and I have trapped approximately 30 cats in 2.5 years. I'm right in the middle of town there. And they are feral cats, too. 3 more cats have been trapped in the past 3 weeks, as well as a possum. When talking with the Welland Humane Society about the frustration with this issue, we are referred to the bylaw officer, Town of Lincoln, and vice versa. Lincoln refers us to the Welland Humane Society. Over the past 2 years, I have suggested revisions to the Animal Care and Control Bylaw, only to be told by my counsellor that it is not the purview of a citizen to write bylaws, that, quote, we have a legal department to do that. My response here is that I know it is not the purview of a citizen to write bylaws, but from the perspective of the person holding the dirty end of the stick, I am living with the results of having an inadequate bylaw, and I have a good idea of what those inadequacies are. I am relieved to see that the Town of Lincoln is finally addressing the situation through the proposed bylaw revision. I've dealt one-on-one with Chris Collings, bylaw enforcement officer, concerning the wording of the bylaw with respect to cats, and I thank him for his efforts to get some necessary teeth into this bylaw. However, there are several areas that I think still need clarification. Looking at the actual bylaw, I presume you all have it. I would offer revised wording as follows. Section 1, definitions on page 2, 1.6, cattery means any facility registered with the CCA, Canadian Cat Association, or who have paid the prescribed fee and who undertake to abide by the charter and bylaws and code of ethics of the association. Excluded from this category are veterinary clinics, grooming establishments, humane societies, pet shops, and animal rescue organizations. 1.15a, breeding kennel, is a kennel where the primary purpose of the facility is for the breeding of dogs for gain. I think those words are very necessary in there. 1.28, rescue facility, means any registered or designated private premises where the owner of the premises boards, that needs to be in there, rescued cats and dogs with the sole purpose of rehab, sterilization, and adoption. Number of restricted domestic animals, page 10, 3.24a. The premises is registered as a kennel or cattery in accordance with the provisions of this bylaw, and add E, the premises is a designated animal rescue facility. Number of restricted domestic animals, cats, page 11 of the bylaws, 3.30. B, The premises is designated as a rescue facility in which all unsterilized cats shall be contained within a building, caged and sterilized before or at the time of adoption. Remove the word caged. A necessary part of the rescue philosophy is socializing these animals, so they are encouraged to mingle within the facility, not to be caged unnecessarily. Numbers 3.33, 3.34, and 3.35 could be removed. These are previously stated verbatim, but for all domestic animals under the section number of restricted domestic animals, and serve no further purpose here. Page 20, enactment 9.11. Quote, this bylaw shall come into force and take effect upon the date of passage, end of quote. And short title 9.13, quote, this bylaw shall come into force and effect on the date of passing an enactment, end of quote. Basically, they say the same thing. 9.13 is more clear and should replace and become 9.11. My final points are that it is unclear what happens if a homeowner has 10 cats or dogs at the time this revised bylaw comes into effect. My immediate concern is a neighboring cat owner who has multiple cats, 9 or more, which she claims are sterilized, that we are dealing with, and the resulting abandoned cats and kittens. Without these restrictions, which are the teeth in the bylaw, she will keep producing kittens and replacing older cats as they die and abandoning those she doesn't want. In other words, she will still keep producing fresh stock. I can find nothing in the amended bylaw that addresses that situation. Would it be appropriate to insert as follows, cats, dogs, owned beyond the restriction, 3 dogs, 4 cats, are on the effective date of the revised bylaw and who do not qualify under 3.24A to E will be exempt for the life of the animal, provided said animals are registered with the town, spayed, neutered, and written proof of same is provided. On the death of said animals, Section 324, number of restricted domestic animals shall apply. Also, should there be a statement in the bylaw with an acknowledged limit of complaints for a single address recorded by the bylaw enforcement officer that triggers action by the bylaw enforcement officer and the Humane Society, or does this belong elsewhere? And incidentally, there are at least 8 cats running around the property at the corner of Regional 81 and Tufford Road that was the subject of a raid on house cats 4 years ago where 45 cats were taken in. So we still have severe problems with this issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Have you submitted your revision thoughts to the clerk?
I have not given him these. I have an extra copy here if you want.
If you would be so kind, I'm sure that would assist the planning department in going through the bylaw.
I also have it on computer if you need extras.
Okay. If you, yeah.
Okay.
Whether you choose to send it to them electronically or otherwise is fine. Is there any questions from committee? Councilor McPherson?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I just wanted to thank the delegation for coming out tonight. I know it's been a topic that's been certainly on your mind for a couple of years now, and you've pushed and pushed, and we are happy to be here today with a new bylaw, and happy for your input to this. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. CAO, did you have something? Sorry, Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I just I did want to say to Ms. Zimmerman, and we have exchanged a few emails, or I've been on some of the emails that she has exchanged with our staff. There is there is time for us to consider the input that we've received this evening prior to finalization, as we're still working to finalize the document. So I didn't want Ms. Zimmerman to leave thinking that the input and the comments that she made tonight wouldn't find their way into the final proposal we put in front of council for approval.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Madam Mayor, did you have something?
Mr. Chairman, on the issue of a hierarchy of responsibility and accountability, I'd like to know whether Mrs. Zimmerman feels that this bylaw addresses the issue of confusion. And I understand, if I recall, there were also issues when the investigations were taking place about who had the authority to go onto a property and the resulting change. Are we clear about all of these processes that will take place? Because I understand there were issues with evidence being tampered with because of people's goodwill and good intentions. Is this the appropriate place to ask that question? It may not be, but I want to know what Mrs. Zimmerman's impression is of the bylaw in this regard.
Well, I know that Chris Collins told me at one point that the only reasons he could go onto a property were health issues. I believe that was the one was health issues, smell, all that kind of thing. That doesn't cut it, as far as I'm concerned, but it isn't addressed in that bylaw anyway. Somewhere there should be something that says that the bylaw officer, in accompaniment with the Humane Society, is authorized to enter a property after so many complaints and see what's going on. I mean, Chris told me that the lady I'm dealing with, he called her and said, oh yes, I have 9 cats. Oh yes, they're all spayed. And the next thing we know, she's kicking a cat out the door and is having kittens. You know, somebody has to be able to go into these places after so many, I wouldn't say after the first complaint, that's not fair. And it can't be the same complaint from the same people. There have to be, you know, you don't want a vindictive thing here from one person. But where does this, how does it get in that bylaw that they can go in after so many complaints?
Okay, thank you very much. I got the answer that I thought was there, that it's not clear. So we'll talk about it when we talk about the report then. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Zimmerman. You have a motion. So we have some delegations this evening that wish to speak to reports on that are on the agenda this evening. That the requests for the delegations were received outside of the procedural bylaw timelines, and as such require committee's approval to suspend the policy and allow the delegation under section 13.11 of the procedural bylaw. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers, seconded by Councillor Foster, that in accordance with Section 13 of the Town of Lincoln Procedural Bylaw number 2016-40, Council does hereby suspend Section 13.11 of the Procedural Bylaw on this occasion to permit an unscheduled or some unscheduled delegations from the floor. Councillor Foster.
Just to clarify with the motion is that they have been requested additional delegations. In other words, it's not open for another 50 delegations coming forward.
Correct. These are the delegations that have previously contacted the clerk but were late in doing so. Okay. Is that clear for everybody? Your pleasure on that motion? The motion is carried. So the first delegation that requested was Mr. Arun Anand of 1654276 Ontario Incorporated to speak on report PL 1827, Beamsville GO Transit Secondary Plan. Mr. Anand and Mr. Henderson.
Arjun.
Okay, Mr. Anand, please come forward. You have 10 minutes to present.
Good evening, the committee members. My name is Arun Anand, and he's my son, Arjun Anand. So we got a document, which I was just talking today, that we never used to get this communication before. So we got this document only on Saturday. So we informed today to our planner to request for a meeting.
Which document, sir?
It was for the Go Transit plan, for development of Go
This
Transit.
process has been going on for about a year and a half. So
This is the first time I got it, and we own the property here for 10 years. Somehow, I was talking to Mr. Gordon that we never got it before, and so we requested for a meeting today so we can give our input into that.
Please go ahead.
So, sir, we own a property on Ontario Street and QW intersection, and that is Ontario Street northwest section, which is very close to because we couldn't prepare everything, it was a short notice. It is right on the QW and Ontario Street. It is a 6.5 acre parcel, which is designated commercial. It was previously designated as a prestige industrial, and now it is being designated as commercial. And so I want to talk about that property. We own this property for the last, I think, about 10, 12 years. So we are a family-owned business which develop projects, and we have been developing condo buildings in downtown Toronto, and also presently we are discussing the same thing in Burlington, where we are planning to build about 7 to 8 buildings very close to the GO station under the similar plan. And we used to get the communication there, and we have been attending those meetings there, but here we never got it, so I thought I'll put our case today. So this property is right very close to the lake. It has got a clear view of the lake from the property, and also a very good view of the Toronto skyline. So we thought and the property presently is being allowed to build hotels and personal services, restaurants, banquet facilities, and employment and commercial areas in that area. It is very close to the present Go Transit, which is being proposed on the Ontario Street. And this is also very close to the food centers, the Tim Horton, that plaza just across the QW. So we thought we have the expertise of building condos, which is being used by seniors, and also we are planning for rental, and as well as we are selling units in Toronto. So our building, in fact, I got the brochure, which I did not know, so I can leave it here. Our building was judged one of the best designed building, and it is being used on Toronto's website also. They wanted to use our building, and so we got the Builders Award for a very nicely designed building, which I'm sure the town of Lincoln is wanting to do here in this area. So what we were proposing is, besides the commercial and employment area, if we will like that if this area could be designated as mixed use, where people could also stay, they can live, and they can rent the place, they could buy the place, or the seniors could move in there, because it is very close proximity to the lake, as well as to all the coffee places nearby. And so we were requesting that we should be allowed to have a high density residential area besides the commercial, and commercial as well as the employment areas in that area. Something similar is being proposed also in Burlington, where they told us that on the ground floor and the lower floors we should be having commercial, and then the top, the residential units can be built up. So I think it is the same provincial policy which is being all across the province being implemented. So just because we got this information very late, so we said we'll present our case, and then we'll inform our land planner to put a proposal to the committee, and then we can come and discuss it again. So that was our request, that the property should be considered to be allowed as a high density residential also on that property.
Unfortunately, we weren't able to actually submit any material in prior to this meeting. I do have, I don't know if you guys can kind of see this. It's that particular property over there, which is within the intensification core, and it's currently zoned commercial. And our request is to actually classify that as a mixed-use property, essentially allowing for a variety of different uses. It is directly on the highway, and it's in close proximity as well to the GO station. So.
Thank you. Any questions from committee at this time? More questions will be answered, obviously, by staff at the time the report comes forward, but are there any questions to the delegation? Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
So we will submit a proposal to our planner shortly to the city, to the town of Lincoln.
Next delegation we have is Tanya and Basil McCurry, 4205 Maple Grove Road South in Beamsville. Speaking to the zoning bylaw amendment application by Cuesta Estates Winery. Mrs. McCurry?
Yes, some of these issues have come up already tonight, but I'll just read what I have. At the time, Bench Brewery was applying to develop the former Maple Grove School building into a craft brewery by adding on the addition. Site plans were submitted to the town for local residents to review and the town council for planning and development to approve. Those plans indicated that the former church building was going to be used as an office for the brewing business. Now they've changed this to become the banquet hall as per tonight's meeting, along with the event park in behind the building and a storage building in behind that event lawn. This is a massive alteration to the site plans on the property. And obviously we have some concerns with that. Some of the concerns we as local residents have since day one for the brewery development is the future noise from their operation and events, as well as water contamination to our lands and groundwater. The initial plans for the event lawn were shown beside the brewery, which was the former Maple Grove School parking lot. This location was at a further away from the local residents on our street. And now on this new application, they're showing the event lawn, changing the location on the property to behind the former church building, which is much closer to the local residents on the street. And at the time of the initial application of the brewery development, had these building plans shown this orientation as currently displayed, the decision outcome by the town council, the town planning committee, and the OMB hearing may have been different. We certainly do not want the same issues that residents are having by Redstone Winery, which is only one street over from Maple Grove Road. With regards to the water issues, this year, for the first time, we've noticed a much higher water table in our yards. Our house sump pumps, we have 3, are operating more frequently, and the French drain located on the farmland on the north side of our property is flooding, which has never occurred before. The brewery operation commenced their operation. We believe the ground and septic system at the brewery is not large enough to handle the amount of water being processed in their options, and is having a negative impact on our house and our home, and I'm sure the neighboring properties as well, as discussed in the previous delegation. Because our sump pumps are operating more frequently, this is costing us more in energy, and our pumps are wearing down faster, and we've had to replace pumps recently. So this is just an indication of what's occurring on the land just with this initial brewing center at the current production level. And obviously on top of it, there's going to be the banquet facility, and that is probably going to definitely increase the production and the impact on the lands. because their sump pumps are operating more frequently, I said that. If they were ever to fail and we did not catch the issue in time, like our sump pumps fail, then our basement would flood. Apparently the church basement has already flooded this year as well. This is exactly the issue we as local residents have had with this development. If in the future we wanted to add a well to our property, we're very concerned about contamination of the groundwater. This would take away from our right to obtaining clean water, possibly. There is a concern for myself, as mentioned in the Bernison delegation. Other residents in the area that currently have wells should be equally concerned with this possibility. The OMB hearing concluded that a berm was to be built along the north side of the farm property as well as along Maple Grove Road, and this berm has not been installed, but according to previous speakers, that issue was addressed, so that it's still on the table to be built soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from committee? Seeing no questions, thank you very much. We have no items of correspondence this evening on the agenda, so we'll move right into the reports section. All committee motions arising from consideration of the upcoming reports this evening will be presented to Council for final approval at its meeting of May 22nd, 2018. Following Council consideration and approval next week and the enactment of any bylaws that may be necessary, the town's decision regarding these reports will be final and notices of decision will be issued where required in accordance with the Planning Act. So the first report on our agenda this evening is PL 18-27, the Beamsville GO Transit Secondary Plan. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Timmers, that for reasons outlined in PL 18-27, it's hereby recommended that the official plan amendment consisting of the updated Beamsville GO Transit Station Secondary Plan, PLOPA 20180020, be approved and presented to Council for approval, and that number 2, that amendment number 4 of the town official plan as adopted be forwarded to the NAG region for approval. Are there any questions to the report? Councilor McPherson, start it off.
So with regards to the delegation tonight, is there a piece of this that we section off and look at individually, maybe through you to the director, Mr. Chair? With regards to the delegation tonight?
Go ahead, Kathleen.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, in regards to the GO Transit Secondary Plan, there is some wording that potentially allows for some changes of use over time. However, one of the things that's currently within provincial policy is that if you have lands that are within an employment area, you can't just go ahead and change those to some other use. It actually has to be addressed first at the regional level through the regional comprehensive review. And that's part of the process that the region is doing right now. And we also have to look at it from the town's employment needs assessment. So it's not something that we could automatically change in the secondary plan at this time.
So essentially, if I can kind of paraphrase, essentially these folks would have to go to the region first and put their case forward there, and then I would filter back this direction.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes. I mean, the region is initiating a comprehensive review, so that would be one of the things that they could do is talk to the region about employment land supply, because the region has to look at employment land supply not only in the town of Lincoln but also the region as a whole. So they could start there. If there are changes made at the regional level, then there is the potential to make changes to the town's official plan, but it first has to happen at the regional level.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen. Did that answer your question, Councillor?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secondary plans are tremendous documents to help us with both our aspirational and foundational guidelines that we're moving into the future with areas, et cetera. And so with this one, having read through it, I think it's captured quite nicely what it is that we have stated as a council and where others are coming from with this. So I'm very happy with this particular document. Maybe a bit of a sidebar note. I noticed in the newspaper the Grimsby Station getting a tacit level of approval as is going on. So perhaps to the CAO, has there been any more bubbling in the background when it comes to GO Transit for the Beamsville area, and where does he see that going to in the near future? Thanks.
Thanks. We'll try and keep it on topic, but go ahead.
Through Mr. Chairman to the councillor, to try to keep it on topic and keep my answer very brief, it remains a focus from a staff perspective. Absolutely, we continue to advocate both with our friends at Metrolinx as well as the region in terms of our readiness and the work that we are doing to ensure that a potential GO station in a subsequent phase is there. I think following June, depending on what happens, that could very well be accelerated, and we'll be coming back to council as we set those government relations priorities moving forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sayo. Any other questions, comments to the report? So I've read the motion on that report. Council's or committee's pleasure on that motion? Thank you. Motion is carried. So I have another motion attached to this one, moved by Councillor Timmers, seconded by Councillor Foster. The Planning Committee has considered all of the written and oral submissions and agrees with the planning report analysis and recommendations, and finds that subject to the conditions of approval, this application meets the Planning Act criteria. It's consistent with the provincial policy statement and complies with the growth plan, the Niagara Regional Official Plan, and the Town Official Plan. Questions to the motion? Yes, Mayor?
No, my apologies.
Okay. Your pleasure on the motion? Thank you. Motion's carried. Next item on our agenda is PL 1828. It's a request to consider a minor variance application by Agribur Ontario Incorporated. I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Mayor Easton. For the reasons outlined in PL 18-28, it's hereby recommended that Council approve a request to consider a minor variance submission by Agribur Ontario Incorporated as an exception to Section 45 1.3 of the Planning Act that prohibits requests for a minor variance before the second anniversary of the day on which the bylaw was amended. Any questions to that motion? Committee's pleasure on that motion? Motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is report PL 18-29, subdivision agreement with Cherry Heights. I have a motion moved by Sandra Easton, Mayor, and by Councillor McPherson. For reasons outlined in PL 18-28, it's hereby recommended that the bylaw be presented to Council for approval to authorize the execution of a subdivision agreement for Cherry Heights Extension subdivision with Agribur Ontario Incorporated, and that agreement be finalized subject to A, final review of the agreement by the town solicitor, town staff, and applicable agencies, B, final approval of the engineering plans and by development engineering staff and applicable agencies, and C, final approval of the engineering estimates by development engineering staff to reflect the final engineering plans. And item 3, the non-developmental charges eligible works for the stormwater management works in the amount of $827,543.12 plus a 15% engineering and contingency plus HST be funded from long-term borrowing. That's a very long motion. Does anybody have any questions to the? Oh, there's more. I'm so sorry. I'm not used to seeing more on the flip side. Item 4, that the non-developmental charges eligible works for water main replacement in the amount of $29,257.50 plus 15% engineering and contingency and HST be funded through water reserves. And 5, on a go-forward basis, the Director of Planning and Development be delegated the authority to reduce and release letters of credit relating to all subdivision and development agreements. Sorry, that was an extra long motion. Any questions to the report? Councillor Foster.
So 2 things. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First and foremost, just so everybody's completely aware with this is a really significant motion that's being passed at this point in time. This is resolving a substantial problem that we have had within this municipality in the Beamsville area that has been outstanding for years. It started before I got on council. I'm sure it started before Councillor McMillan got on council as well. Well, maybe not that far back, but the reality is that this is going to make a much safer system all the way around for us within the downtown area, and resolve a lot of these problems that have been going through. But I do have one question on the last item within this motion. So. Normally, reduce and release letters of credit relating to subdivision and development agreements does come back as a standard item through to committee. So is this a change in policy that's being suggested at this particular point in time? And if so, is it just right for us to be discussing this through a motion such as this, or should that be discussed at a bit higher level?
Director Dale.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Planning staff are always finding ways to improve processes. When we bring a report forward to reduce a letter of credit, the applicant is actually entitled to that letter of credit reduction based on a previous subdivision agreement that was put in place. So in a lot of cases, it's almost more of a formality. Before we used to bring these forward, I mean, we do have to do our due diligence to make sure deficiencies, are addressed. In this case, the reason I'm bringing it forward at this time is because this particular subdivision agreement has proposed wording to that effect. So that's why it's being brought forward at this time.
Can't say that I'm totally happy with changes in procedural methodology or policy being slid through with a motion such as this. So I don't know what the rest of committee feels with this. It's just, this is new. This is a new methodology that's going on. And my preference would be that we should really have had a discussion about it before we actually saw it on a motion. So anyway, maybe I'm making a big to-do out of nothing, but on the opposite side of the coin, this has a fairly significant impact on finances, and these things have typically come through committee before they've been enacted. So,
okay, thank you, Councillor. Director Dale, do you have anything more on that? Okay, Mayor Easton.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to understand better about the process that has been chosen here. It is a very large sum of money we're talking about, and this is quite a change in direction. I don't know what you would recommend, what the director would recommend as an option. I don't know what how urgent the timing is on this this approval. Maybe we could have a little more information.
Director Dale.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, in regards to the subdivision agreement, the applicants are quite anxious to get a subdivision agreement in place. In regards to the items 3 and 4, item number 3 was the subject of a previous agreement for the stormwater management works. I think the reason that staff are making the suggestion at this time is because, we're proposing a subdivision agreement for this particular property, and we are suggesting some revised wording so that on a go-forward basis, we can, through staff, reduce these letters of credit. The one thing to keep in mind, though, is that there is an assumption bylaw that's required at the end of the process, so there would still be an assumption bylaw that would have to go to council. So there'd still be a final decision by council.
Thank you.
Councillor Foster?
Okay, I'm going to make a request that line item 5 be struck from this particular motion. And I'm hoping I can get someone else to consider that as well. And the reason for it is very simple. I'm reading this thing, and first of all, if one was to go by the absolute letter of a motion, this is basically stating that from this point forward, the Director of Planning and Development be delegated the authority to reduce and release letters of credit relating to all subdivision and development agreements. So this is a big problem. Like, I do not believe that we as a council have given any consideration to anything such as this. And I actually am a little bit, if you'll pardon the expression, almost insulted that this is coming through in such a manner. I mean, this is a fairly significant change to what we have done in the past. So I think this should be struck, and I think it should be discussed at the Committee of the Whole. And if we're in agreement that we're going to pass this delegation over to the Planning Department, that's fine. But we should not be seeing it as an omnibus bill, if you want to put it that way, coming through with a simple planning report.
So, thank you, Councillor. So from a standpoint of this particular development and this particular motion, and I understand you're wanting to discuss the all-encompassing nature of number 5, perhaps based on the wording that the Director is referring to in the agreement, it could be limited to this particular subdivision agreement, and then moving forward, having the other discussed.
My preference would be to strike it from this motion at this point in time, because it's not going to have an overall effect, and like the rest of the motion is fine. I mean, it's laying out very clearly what it is that's happening at this particular point in time. So that would be my preference. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor McPherson?
Mr. Chair, I can support Councillor Foster's recommendation.
Okay. And Mr. Kirkopoulos?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, if I could offer some comments to council on this particular item, and I'm glad to see that committee is supportive of moving forward with this particular motion, notwithstanding that last particular item. We can come back at a future meeting and share with you why we've gone in this direction. I think council, over the last number of months and years, has asked us to come back with ideas that help streamline the process, that help put the decisions in staff's hands where we think it's appropriate, and absolutely we can share with committee all the municipalities, a large number of them, I would say the majority, that currently have this delegated. It wasn't an idea that just popped up. It's something that we have been exploring for some time. So notwithstanding any of that, I'm in agreement, I think, and we'll take council's direction to come back at a future meeting and give council a very holistic presentation on exactly what we're discussing here and exactly what letter of credits are as it relates to guaranteeing payments within a subdivision agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Seo. Mayor Easton?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think that Mr. Kirkopoulos has given us a good explanation, and we certainly do look for the staff to it's not just a matter of creativity, it's a matter of good business practice. We should have the discussion, and then we'll all feel comfortable that we completely understand what that delegation means and how it will be carried out in the future. I don't think we're doing any harm at the moment and I think it is the executive authority of council that we should not minimize on matters such as this.
Very good. Mr. CEO?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the only other comment that I would add is that I think it is important for FBH to get started on the work that they want to get started, so this allows that to happen while we come back and we deal with something a little bit more holistically.
Certainly, I commend staff on coming forward with ways to make things more efficient. Certainly, council needs to have input on that moving forward. So I've got an amended motion by the mover and seconder to remove the 5th point on that motion. Is everybody in committee in agreement on that? Okay, very good. And your pleasure on that motion? Motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is PL 18-30, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment application Cuesta Estates Winery. I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Mayor Easton, that for the reasons outlined in PL 18-30, it's hereby recommended that the official plan amendment PLOPA 20170200 and the zoning bylaw amendment application PLZBA 20170201 in the name of Cuesta Estates Wine and Winery Incorporated be approved for the purpose of allowing a banquet facility as an accessory use to the bench brewing operation. Any questions or comments? Councilor McPherson?
Through Mr. Chair, just a comment, and my comment is that, all along the road, starting with the brewery and now through the church, there has been a very good recognition of the public input and acknowledgement of what the concerns were of the residents. And, I don't think anybody is discounting a facility that's near to a residential property. It's going to be somewhat disruptive, but, I think that if you look at, starting with the heritage and moving along with lighting and berms, and I'm going to get an elbow in the side, but I quite like the glass fixture on the side. But my point is, Mr. Giffen and his group have been very, very aware of concerns and have made changes to the plan along the way, and I commend them for doing that. And even recognition of the noise bylaw tonight, and being in sync with that. So, I come back to an earlier comment that I made that, here is a repurposing of 2 potentially empty facilities in our town that, I think we can be proud of. And, we know that they're still under construction, so there's still things to be done that will show in the plan. I'm confident in the explanation on the water piece. Not sure how much that has to do with the brewery or the wet winter we had and the all of the water that we've seen so far this year. But I am in full support of this report going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? Very good. Committee's pleasure on this motion? Motion. By the way, Councillor Petrieva, you can't vote, as you're not part of the committee. So the motion is carried. Second part to this motion, moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Timmers, that the Planning Committee considered all of the written and oral submissions and agrees with the planning report analysis and recommendations, and finds that the subject to the conditions of approval, this application meets the Planning Act criteria, is consistent with the provincial policy statement, and complies with the growth plan and the Niagara Region official plan and the town official plan. Committee's pleasure on this motion? The motion is carried. I'm ahead of myself. Okay, so the next report on the agenda is PL 1831, proposed revisions to the Animal Care and Control Bylaw. I have a motion moved by Mayor Easton and seconded by Councillor McPherson. That for reasons outlined in PL 1831, it's hereby recommended that this report be received for information and that a recommendation report and final bylaw be prepared once all comments have been received and the successful Animal Care and Control Services contract has been awarded. You have a question? Please, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. Actually, Councillor Patch-Reeve and Councillor McMillan and I lived through the infamous CATS bylaw back a number of years ago, where we had people protesting out front, and CHTV and CFTO and the Globe and Mail and every other newspaper in Southern Ontario there to see what a bunch of crazy people we were trying to put through the bylaw at the time. The single biggest thing that was missed at that time and wasn't really understood was exactly what Mrs. Zimmerman said earlier this evening. There were a lot of good qualities that were within that original bylaw, and it got completely derailed. So I'm really happy to see this. Unfortunately, a good friend of mine here in Beamsville passed away shortly after that. He died of cancer, and he simply was not able to use his garden areas and stuff like that because of cats and a variety of things like that. So I think just suffice to say, I think we've now moved in the right direction, and of course it'll be fine-tuned over the next number of years, but we're making much better strides with this. So thank you for staff for finally bringing this through.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Chair Thompson. I kind of echo Councillor Foster. I was really happy to see this as well, and I think Mrs. Zimmerman had a lot of really good, solid points, and actually they were some of my questions, and she answered some of those questions. So moving forward, I really hope that we take her comments into consideration, because I think she really nailed some of those points quite well. So just my comments on it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I want to ask some questions about the exotic animals and the prohibited animals. And I don't see any need for us to have to allow exotic animals. I don't see any reason to allow prohibited animals. And I would be very pleased to see, as staff were reviewing all of the considerations here, if they could look into what would be involved in actually eliminating those from the list. I think bringing animals in from their country of origin is fraught with a lot of issues around the care and treatment of animals. I think I did some research on what happens when first responders go into homes that have exotic animals, and also particularly if they are not ones that can be vaccinated for rabies, and also just the lack of knowledge about some of these animals. So while they're going into the home to perform some essential business for humans, they may be distracted by these animals that exist in the home. So I don't, certainly I would look for guidance on that. I also discovered that there are times when there can be 15 or more agencies involved in the review of these situations, including the local bylaw and the SPCA, regional and local legal Public Health, the OPP, Niagara Regional Police Services, the MNR when it comes to things like local cougars versus exotic cougars. Sometimes the provincial vet has to be involved if there are infectious disease issues, as well as the local vets. And I also asked questions about the releasing of animals into rural areas, and maybe with your permission, we could have our provider from Welland come down and talk about any experience with that. But I don't see any reason why we need to engage in creating problems for ourselves when it's not necessary. And so I'm looking to strike both of those categories from the bylaw. And also, Mr. Chairman, I would like an answer to the question around the hierarchy of responsibility and accountability, because I want to make sure that the public is absolutely clear about who's responsible, who's going to respond, instead of this bouncing back and forth. So those would be my concerns.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to respectfully request that the folks from the Humane Society be given opportunity to perhaps provide information to staff, as opposed to putting them on the spot to come and speak this evening to it. But to your other question with regards to who's responsible, perhaps, Matt, would you like to address that?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that we can provide a little more clarification on, and we'll look for ways to do so in our wording when we, further update this draft. There's still an opportunity, to revise accordingly, but definitely, when we issue the RFP, which is part of this too, and that's, when we award the successful service provider, that's when we want to be coming back with the final bylaw. That RFP contains services that need to be dealt with pertaining to issues such as licensing, such as animal cruelty, such as strays, abuse, things of the like. So it's meant to be a collaborative effort, but typically due to the the facilities that the service provider may have available to them that perhaps the town does not, the intent of the service provision is to provide those services in those specific cases. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, all of those answers are quite suitable, and I'm as everyone, we're looking for a very strong bylaw, clearly, something that's going to stand up in court, and something that goes beyond the routine when it comes to what we're going to allow into the community. There certainly are far-reaching impacts of being cavalier about this. That's not a good word, being a little bit lenient about it. The issue of individual rights versus public good is one that comes to the forefront with this particular bylaw. So I thank you for that. I'll look forward to the report. Otherwise, I find the bylaw to be very comprehensive, and I think the staff have really done a good job of pulling it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Certainly. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? I certainly appreciate the fact that staff has been willing to incorporate the input from public, specifically Mrs. Zimmerman, on this. Obviously not to craft the whole bylaw, but certainly to give input in areas that it needed to be given in. So anyway, I've got the motion. I've read the motion. Committee's pleasure on the motion? Thank you. Motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is report PL 18-32, January to March 2018, building permit activity. This is the normal report we receive from staff. Is there any questions to the report? Councillor Foster?
Just the one I always ask for Mr. Greenaway. Are there any concerns from his point of view on the numbers that are being looked at?
But Mr. Greenaway isn't here this evening, so perhaps Mr. Bruder or Mrs. Dale can answer for him.
And I'm sure they can.
Go ahead, Mrs. Dale.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think you'll find that when you see the next 3 months, there's going to be the next 3 months and then the next 3 months after that, there's going to be quite a bit of increase in the figures for building activity, construction value, just based on the amount of development that's currently in the planning process that makes its way to issuance of building permits.
Okay, so look for expanded numbers coming down the pipe shortly. Very good. So I've got a motion moved by Mayor Easton and seconded by Councilor McPherson that PL 1832 report relating to all building permits being issued for January through March 2018 be received as information. Committee's pleasure on the motion. The motion is carried. Next report we're going to be looking at is PL 18-33, request for site plan and tax increment financing assumption agreements by Hodan Investment Corporation. And I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson and seconded by Mayor Easton. For the reasons outlined in PL 18-33, it's hereby recommended that 1, that a bylaw be presented to Council for approval to authorize the execution of a site plan assumption agreement and a tax increment financing assumption agreement with Hodan Investment Corporation, and 2, that the grant payment not be provided to Hodan Investment Corporation until 1419405 Ontario Incorporated, 1419406 Ontario Incorporated, and 2252620 Ontario Limited have submitted all the required documentations for the payment of the grant. Are there any questions to the report? The motion? Your pleasure on the motion? The motion is carried. Sorry. I'm throwing them at you. Next report on our agenda this evening is PL 18-34, proposed revisions to the Clean Yards bylaw. So a motion moved by Councillor Timmers, seconded by Councillor Foster, that for reasons outlined in PL 18-34, it's hereby recommended that number 1, bylaw numbers 04-30 and 08-40, being bylaws to provide for the maintenance of land in the town, be repealed. And 2, that the new Clean Yards bylaw, as outlined in Appendix A, be presented to Council for approval once a legal review of the draft bylaw has been completed. Are there any questions from committee? Question from Mayor Easton?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any questions, but I think the staff, again, have really taken to account the concerns that have been raised by the public over the last at least 2.5 years. They seem to be well reflected in the document. It appears to have the teeth that it needs. I'm glad that the timing has been shortened so that there isn't going to be any leniency really allowed. If people don't do the work, it will be done and they will be charged for it on their taxes. This is the policy that other communities have taken on, and it certainly gives the neighbors peace of mind when there isn't compliance. So I'm pleased to see that that's in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Anything else to add, Councillor Petrieva?
Yes, Chair Thompson, through you. And I lost where I was because I hit my little button here. But with respect to, let me try to find it back. With respect to grass and yards, I think there needs to be a further tightening up in that. Turf grass, so section 2, so 2.2, where it talks about a height of not more than 20 centimeters. So that's almost 8 inches. So, and I think there needs to be a delineation between cutting of grass and turf grass. So, you know, maybe I'm a little OCD when it comes to my yard, but, you know, the mayor in her preamble of every council meeting says, you know what, Lincoln is a nice place to live. You do your due diligence to make it that way. And I think 20 centimeters is much too high. half of that distance or height, I think would be proper. You've got a subdivision where everyone's yard is nicely kept, 20 centimeters, you're living next door to the Gruesomes. And I think that needs to be tightened up, and I think that is one of the areas where we have fallen short in the past, and it's not addressed. And then the further question I have, and I couldn't find it, and it's probably back in the report, but it's with respect to the buffer strips. So again, a tightening up on the buffer strips when it's butting up against residential properties. I'm thinking Ontario Street, we're driving in, there's probably half a dozen of them. A 1 meter buffer strip isn't enough, I would say, given the outbreak of ticks and various other sundry items that are in the grass and then jumping back and forth and to and fro. So again, I think those need to be tightened up. And again, when you're getting to that height and then the time lag goes by where they're in compliance, now you're over a foot. And again, these are gateways and thoroughfares and prime tourism travel areas. I think we can do better.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm sure staff will look into the common practice among other municipalities with regards to height of grass and then take your comments into consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like a Made in Lincoln solution. I don't want to be like everyone else.
Any other committee members have any comments? Your pleasure on this motion? This motion is carried. Okay. That's the end of the reports for this evening. Are there any councillor inquiries? Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You say that so enthusiastically. Okay, I have three, starting with the Mr. Convenience property, and we're now a couple of years down the road from an exciting time that we thought we were moving forward with a nice building, and if you drive up there now, the once were beautiful little signs that coming soon are now flapping in the wind. And I guess my question is, what is going on? What do we know? And what pressures can we bring to move the owner forward? Because anytime I go by there, there's little or no activity. So I guess through you, Mr. Chair, maybe to the CAO.
I'm actually going to go to Kathleen.
Or Kathleen, okay. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, in regards to the Mr. Convenience property, I don't know if committee is aware, but there was that property at one time was a gas station, so there was contamination on the property. So that contamination has been cleaned up. However, with any cleanup, you have to continue to do testing. So the applicant is at the point where he has to do another, he's done, what I understand, some recent testing, and then you have to wait another 3 months to make sure those come back okay, satisfactory to the Ministry of Environment. So the applicant can't really build anything until such time as he gets a final clearance from the Ministry of Environment. So he's getting closer to that Ministry of Environment approval, but he's not quite there yet.
So through you, Mr. Chair, to the director, do we have a do we have any leverage with the owner of the property for a timeline to completion? Do we have any leverage to push for these 3-month periods to be adhered to make sure that they're moving forward? Because there just seems to be, just looking at it, it's now, as I said, fallen into disrepair again, and it's right in smack in the middle of our downtown. So I just like to get a higher level of comfort that we're on top of it, we're pushing this thing through, and we won't be sitting here next summer hoping that something happens. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Dale.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, for committee's information, the applicant has submitted a site plan application, so he's trying to run his site plan approval process parallel with getting his Ministry of Environment approvals. The applicant is just as anxious as staff and council are to see something happen with that property, but it's really, at this point, it's the Ministry of the Environment and getting what's referred to as a record of site filed with the ministry so that he can actually start construction.
Okay, and I will continue to ask as we move along in our planning meetings. Next topic I have is parking in the downtown, and maybe an update as far as summer project plans. When looking at the library parking lot, when looking at Hickson parking, when looking at potentially other parking in the downtown that we have identified as improvements for this summer. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the director or to the CAO.
Mr. CAO, do you want to take that?
Through Mr. Chairman, I can speak a little bit to one of the particular plans, and I know I can have Ms. Dale or Mr. Graham speak to the Hickson Street parking lot specifically. As it relates to one of the plans that we had proposed for council related to the underground parking at No Frills, that is no longer an option as a result of what I'm going to call a change in direction. From the perspective of increased tenant and increased traffic in that underground parking lot, and so the owners of that particular property have rescinded that particular offer. One of the things that the committee will recall is we did reach out and we had discussed the potential of using the parking lot at the BDSS site, and so I do have a conversation, and I've sent an email off to the board to start having that conversation, definitely as it relates to looking at some of the staff parking that's required for some of our downtown businesses that is a little bit less fluid and a little bit more static. And so I hope to have some feedback from the school board on that particular item. But I will let Kathleen and or Dave speak to the timelines around the Hickson Street work that we had planned on doing.
Mr. Graham, you want to come out of the bullpen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as the temperature warms up, we'll be looking at doing the painting works. Probably in the next month or so with the temperature warming.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Appreciate it.
That's good. And to the recommendation for Beamsville High School, you know, in conversations at the BIA meetings, there is a very receptive business community to having their employees park somewhere else, so freeing up spots in the downtown core. So that sounds like it might be a nice option there. So thank you for that. And finally, I have just a request on an update as far as the Bayview Pond on Jordan Road. And I do know that the MPCA is said that they had no real play in this, that it was not in the floodplain, and that they were not expecting to be contacted as a result of that. And my question is, I know there was a meeting. I was not able to attend that meeting. And do we have actions coming out of that meeting? And if so, what are they? Thank you.
Mr. CAO.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, maybe I can provide just a brief overview, and you were in the meeting as well, as were a number of senior staff, Ms. Dale, Jillian Harris from our water department was there, Mr. Graham, Ms. Beatty, and a number of other senior staff. At the end of the day, we explored a number of different avenues, finally going down the route with the MOECC the Ministry of the Environment that did do an examination in terms of the construction of the lagoon to ensure that it was constructed in the most appropriate manner. And I think as Councillor McPherson highlighted, we also had the MPCA examine that to determine whether it was within a floodplain. At the end of the day, I think what has occurred is probably a lack of communication from the various parties to the municipality when these works were going on. They are all in conformity with either provincial policy, NPCA policy, or town policy and bylaws, and so I think it does warrant a further conversation with Bayview as it relates to those particular things, and I think a closing of the loop with the residents on this particular matter. But at the end of the day, I think what we've discovered is it has been constructed appropriately, it's being used appropriately, but we weren't informed by the various agencies, so some learnings, I think, for all of us.
Thank you, Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm satisfied with that.
Appreciate that meeting, actually, with the residents and staff and whatnot, to make sure everything was in proper order. So anyway, are there any other councillor inquiries? Seeing none. Any notices of motion? Seeing none. Any announcements? Seeing none. And we have a closed session this evening, scheduled for this evening. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Foster and seconded by Councillor Timmers that committee adjourn to closed session in order to address a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, a matter pertaining to the District School Board of Niagara and Ontario Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Pleasure on that motion. The motion is carried. So we're going to be going into closed session in the Beamsville room, so perhaps we have a 5-minute break before doing so.
Thank you.
To stretch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're so kind.
Well.
We need stretches. Kathleen.